I'm David Benites from Extreme Vocal Institute, and I'm going to be answering some more of your questions today. Dropkick Furby says, I've whisper screamed since I was an early teenager, but when I go to do a full volume one, it sounds limp and cuts out, and I can only get clean vocals at full volume. It's super common for a whisper scream to suddenly close up on you the moment you try to do more with it. Like it'll start to kind of come through and then just get choked off. And that's happening up here in this top part of the throat. If you make these kinds of noises, yo, super big, kind of yawny, yo kind of sound, that'll help to stretch this tissue out. Yo. And if you apply some of that same idea to when you're getting some of that distortion going, yo, that should help you to fight off a little of that clamping down sensation. Yo, to be able to turn that whisper, into something substantial. Asatic asks, is it recommended to learn fry scream and false chord scream at the same time? Being able to use false chord and fry screams is a great skill to have, but getting there is a little different depending on who you are. Sometimes being able to work on both at the same time in the beginning can be helpful because your body's starting to understand all of these pieces together and not unintentionally getting super locked onto one and then kind of disliking the other. Or, depending on who you are, you might notice that working on both kind of starts to meld them unintentionally together, and that might not be what you want, especially if you're trying to definitively get one type of scream to come out and another comes out unintentionally by accident. So really take your time with this. Experiment. You can look at the information for both at the same time, give them both your best shot. If you start to notice a little bit of confusion, your body not really listening to you, work on one and then the other. Whatever's going to make the most sense to you and your body. Cole asks, how do I make my false chords sound more refined and smooth and not feel as choppy and inconsistent? It sounds like you're having issues here in the placement of the larynx and things might be getting kind of stuck and then trying to adjust every now and again, creating a little bit of this kind of moving around sensation within the way the scream is happening. Take 2 fingers and kind of just gently massage the muscles up and down the larynx like this, and the next time you go into the scream, take a slow, deep breath and try to enter with a little less energy. And you should notice the placement, starting to come into place, getting a little more consistent with itself and not wanting to jump around as much. This will take some time, definitely practice with this one for a little bit, but that should really help to get this area to calm down. Matt Conradi asks, I was wondering about hydration when screaming. I always feel like my throat gets dry really quickly when I'm practicing, and then it feels more difficult to get fry noise. Does screaming always dry you out quicker? How do you avoid it? When doing fry screams dries you out, that's usually because of the fact that extra air is coming through the vocal tract in order to make that work. That being said, we can control how much. Make sure to work on breath support so you can dial back the amount that you're using, so the scream goes from being a little looser and more open to being a little more refined, so now not as much air is coming through and you get more direct distortion, and that will help a lot to keep the dryness feeling at bay. With that in mind, hydration is key too, and you don't need to drink an absolute ton of water, but definitely drink a little more water than you normally would, because like any other physical activity, when we're screaming, our bodies are going through a lot, so we need to give it what it needs. Oystein DM asks, how can I balance being an extreme vocalist and an opera singer? There's a ton of crossover between extreme vocals and opera, and this is something I use all the time for my teaching and execution. You can use all of the health benefits and all of the ways that you've been able to strengthen your voice to get a ton of tone out of it. The big thing is going to be spending a lot of time with the individual pieces of screams. False chord screams will probably be easier for you with such a heavy background in singing because that's just your regular voice and the false chords coming together without having to change anything. Fry will be harder at first, but if you can really learn to manipulate the vocal cords to do and break up when you want them to, then because of the strength of your voice, because of what you do with opera, you can turn something small and delicate into something big and powerful through all of the things that you already know. Noah DG asks, are there ways that you can utilize and explore your daily speaking voice in order to practice and explore components of screaming? The way we scream and the way we speak are super closely related, and there's stuff in our speaking voices that can really benefit our screams. This is something I have people work on all the time to practice screaming and get more out of it. Regardless of what you're saying, if you can kind of keep the pacing, keep the flow, keep the melody of the way you say things, the pronunciation, and slowly add in the way that you would scream to that without actually losing those aspects of yourself, suddenly you're gaining access to lots of other stuff in the screams that maybe you wouldn't have necessarily found if it was just pounding away at song after song that we feel like needs to be done in a specific way. Practice screaming along to whatever the thoughts you are that you're having and kind of speak your way through it to discover more of what you have the ability to do. Michael Bennis says, I've noticed that when I scream, specifically with fry screaming, that a sort of wind-like whistle happens no matter what style of fry scream I try to do. I've been trying to clean it up and get the sound tighter, but sometimes I feel like I might be fighting against myself and doing too much. The windiness tends to sound better with high fry screams, but sounds odd with mids and lows. Airiness in your fry screams is something that's super common and I see all the time. And if you're trying to fight against that and it's not working, that's usually because there isn't enough regular voice, or you, in the center of the sound. If the vocal cords are super open, and mine will sound different than yours, you'll notice like air escaping around what's going on. And for your voice, that might sound a little bit like this whistling tone that's hard to remove. If you start with your regular voice, regardless of what pitch you want to do it from, and gradually add the other sound to it, you'll kind of find, a nice middle ground, that'll sound good across the spectrum of your fry screams. Jacob Anderson asks, could you describe the best way to scream as a drill instructor? If you're trying to get the attention of a lot of people all at once, especially when you're outside and the air can take away so much of the sound, you actually want to put less distortion on it and focus more on pitch. Higher pitches are going to travel faster and with more energy than lower ones. That's how the sounds work. So if anything, you want to speak with a slightly heightened tone of voice, as opposed to trying to go down to be taken seriously. Go up a little bit to kind of prove that point. And if you can make a little bit of this buzzer noise too, just a little, that'll give you just a little bit of extra juice to be able to get those points across to everyone in front of you! KD the Fat Ninja says, this will sound vague, but is it possible to get my scream back? I haven't done it in a really long time, and nothing I do is getting me back to it. Trying to scream after a long break can definitely be tough. Screaming is such a specific muscular motion, just like any other kind of physical activity, and the body isn't going to necessarily remember how to jump back in right away if it's been a while. This also might be a sign that there were things in the way you were doing it before that your body may not be okay with now, and take in mind that some time has gone by, you're a little older now, and what the body wants and needs as time goes on changes. There's never anything wrong with going back to the roots of things, starting from scratch, reassociating yourselves with all of the building blocks of the screams to really understand it, work on the components, and bring it all together again in a way that your body is going to be happy with. Tiff asks, what would you suggest for females since we don't have the kind of deepness from men's voices? I've always wondered how to do it. Women and anyone AFAB can have super big, low screams. It just takes different types of manipulation here in the mouth. The vocal tissue here in the throat may be a different shape and size to other people you may hear and those around you, but by manipulating sound, even from other vantage points, you can create much deeper tones that exist within your screams and even your singing voice too, to take something that might not seem like the right size compared to what you're trying to do and the idea you have in your head, and really get a ton more out of it. All of the kind of deeper, longer, sometimes smaller mouth shaping in combination with really intense expression can get you a ton of those tones that you're looking for to get the scream to do exactly what you want. OZ Argaman asks, when I scream for long periods of time, my throat can get pretty sore and tired, and my scream quality goes down. Is this normal? If so, should I keep screaming when I feel my throat getting sore? In the beginning, there's definitely a difference between soreness in your throat and irritation when you start screaming. In the beginning, we're using stuff that we've never felt before and done before, so that's gonna create some odd feelings in the body, and you're gonna notice a little bit of itchiness, a little bit of scratchiness that's coming along as your body's trying to figure out the balancing of the air, how we maintain placement, and shape things into what we want them to be. And those things can solve themselves over time as you get more consistent. But soreness and pain is indicative of other imbalances, and you wanna take a serious look at the way you're doing things if you do feel things to that degree and your throat continues to be sore after you're screaming. So work on rebalancing, take a few steps back, and find other ways to open things up here so that you're not putting as much pressure on all the tools you need to do the job well. Hansel asks, how do you take care of your throat daily? Maintaining overall throat health is super important as a vocalist. Things like stretching everything in the neck and throat daily is super important for keeping tension away. Making different sounds, ooh, yeah, will help to loosen up the edges as well and give you the most space to work with. Stretching out your tongue, will be able to help you get surgically, all the way into the vocal tract and really loosen things up. And finally, just in the way that you speak and the way you handle your day-to-day, try not to do too much shouting. And if you get excited, try to make sure that you do hold things back just a teensy little bit so that we're not overusing the voice, so that you do still have enough juice for when you need it. V Noir asks, what lessons or methods are best for kids to show them and enforce the best and safest ways to use their extreme vocals as they develop and grow? Getting into screaming when you're a kid can be super fun and exciting, but there's definitely going to be some difficulties along the way, because your body and your voice aren't done developing and will keep changing periodically until adulthood. So because of that, regardless of the style of screaming you're using, regardless of the method you're using to get there, it's gonna take a lot of patience to know and understand how to kind of adapt with your voice as it's changing. You may be able to scream one way for a little while, but you'll need to adapt that as time goes on. Really make sure you take time to understand the pieces of the screams. Make sure to not overextend yourself too often, even if you feel like you can. And that will help you to, each step along the way, make sure you can get the most out of what you're able to do at that moment until your voice is where it's going to be. Kate asks, how long did it take for you to learn how to scream? I've been screaming for over 14 years now. And even still, every day I find new things about screaming, new things about myself, and new things about the voice all the time. One thing I say a lot to people I'm working with, and just in general, is that you're never done learning, and I'm no exception to that. When it comes to feeling comfortable, we're all different, and it's gonna take us different amounts of time to really feel like we know and understand our voices. And even after the first couple years and I started to feel more comfortable, as time goes on, and even like I said, on a day-to-day basis, I feel like I come to know myself, my voice, and my screams more and more. Pora asks, any new shit from Renaissance coming? You're gonna have to wait and find out, but I won't keep you waiting for too long. Still have a question I didn't answer? Make sure you comment that down below, because we're definitely gonna do more of these. But that's all for now. We'll see you next time.